Um, okay, that says that we are live. And hi, my name is Amrita. This is Amrita by the Book. This is my channel in case you just stumbled across it. And joining me today is my friend Becca. She runs a blog called Book It with Becca, and there is a link down in my description below. And welcome, Becca. How are
Thank
you?
you. I am well. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about one of my favorite tropes today.
Okay, so the trope that we are going to be talking today, and I realize the title says book fight, but I don't think either one of us has the energy for a real fight, but we are going to have a spirited discussion about this particular trope. And it's the slow burn. So, Becca, you love this trope. Like you've been talking about it for like a long time. Tell me why you love this trope.
For so many reasons. I think the biggest one is probably because it's all about character development. When you have a slow burn, they don't get together right away and they actually have to get to know each other first.
Mm,
And watching them work out their personal issues, their personal differences, and really start to understand each other as people is really appealing to me because then by the time they do finally get together, you're convinced, like, okay, these two are good for each other. They're a good match. And it's really satisfying too because, like, you've been waiting so long.
I guess I see that. It's just that, I didn't really think about it until we said that we were going to do this. And I had this idea when you were talking about it, and you were just talking about how much you loved it. And I started thinking about it. And I think the older I've gotten, and to be fair, I've always been inclined this way. Like even as a kid, like I'm the
Mhm.
kind of person that would read the ending first and then go back and read the beginning of the book. And I just like to point out that the last couple of times I didn't do that was Theft of Sunlight and These Violent Delights, and both of them turned out to be cliffhangers. Spoiler alert.
Ooh, those are on my TBR.
Yeah. So that really bit me in the butt. So I just really like to know things as soon as possible, and I like the payoff to be as immediate as possible. And I've always been that way. But um, yeah, I was trying to think of like what a good slow burn romance might be that I loved. And I know that when we were talking and you were just talking about like how it was just bad writing, that all the examples that I could come up with was just like, like delayed gratification or just bad writing. And I really thought about it and I was thinking, this Pride and Prejudice count as a slow burn romance?
I I was really thinking about this too because I'm an Austen fan, so I was
Yeah.
like, okay, are there any in her books? And I don't think Pride and Prejudice does, um, because one of the main things about a slow burn, in my opinion, to be fair, is that it's a gradual um, increasing of intensity. Things build at a pretty steady pace, and every now and then you may have a jump, but you don't really go backward. With Pride and Prejudice, it's more of like, okay, you have a plateau and then it jumps up and then it moves along and then it jumps up. And I don't think it builds like that gradually, except maybe a little bit in the middle of it. I don't count it. Still a good
Okay.
book.
And Panda thinks that it's Pride and Prejudice is an enemies to lovers book, which yeah, I see that. Like it, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely
Uh,
agree with that. And one thing I do also want to point out is I think the slow burn trope usually works best when it's like a background trope to some other thing, like an enemies to lovers or
mm,
friends to lovers. If you try to make it the main thing,
mhm.
a lot of times it turns into what you and I both don't like, which is the will they, won't they, which I don't think is a trope. I think it's a trick, and I think it's bad writing.
Right. So that is something that we discussed, right? Because I was telling you that I notice it more on TV rather than on like in books. And my example was specifically Bones, the TV show
Mhm.
with David Boreanaz and Emily Deschanel, and where they literally were very upfront about the fact that they didn't want the leads to get together because they were scared of the moonlighting curse, and
Mhm.
they were just actively trying to keep them apart with some really idiotic machinations. Um, but I guess like most of the stuff is like okay. So okay. Tell me the name of a really good slow burn romance that maybe like most people have read.
Okay, one that maybe most people have read. I mean, I came with a few titles today and I tried to pick from various genres and eras, but I think one that a lot of romance readers will recognize is The Countess Conspiracy by Courtney Milan. I
Aha.
think that's a really good slow burn because it takes a really long time for them to get together. But while they're, waiting for that, they're working through their issues. They're coming to understand themselves and each other. And by the time they do finally get together, you believe that they can make it work. And it's really worth the payoff. And it is very hot as well because it's Courtney Milan.
Do you want to just give like a short synopsis for people who don't know that book?
Yes. So the Countess Conspiracy is the third book in the Brothers Sinister series. I think it's just a trilogy, right? Yeah, because
I
there are
can't
three
remember.
brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and it's about a woman named Violet who is a widowed countess and secretly a scientist, particularly working with flowers and looking at genetics and a little bit of evolution. But she can't publish her own work because she has lady parts. And so she convinces her best friend, Sebastian, who is a flamboyant rake and very fun and personable. And she convinces him to present her work for her. And so he has to pretend that he is a scientist to all these people. His family gets mad at him because some of what he's presenting is rather scandalous for the times. And but the story begins, third book in the series. This has been going on for a while in the background, and he has decided that he doesn't want to do it anymore. So she has to convince him, to keep doing it while he doesn't want to because, it's had this huge effect on his life. And also, he just can't bear to be working this closely with her because he's been in love with her forever. Um, of course. And so, as they're trying to sort through those problems, they come together, and it's really, really sweet and smart and good and just like a great complex romance with a great slow burn. It's totally worth it.
Okay, so for everyone that's watching, Becca told me that she was in it to win it when she agreed to come on this thing. And I have to say, like coming out of the gate with Courtney Milan is an excellent move. And when I was telling Panda about this, and Panda was just like, "You just have one job. You just have to stand there and be like, no, I refuse to read it." And can't do that for this one because I actually have read it and it actually is a really good book. Yeah, that is true. Deeply just pointed out that there are like four books in the Brother Sinister series. So yeah,
Oh, yes, because there's the one about the parents.
yeah. Uh-huh.
I love that one, by the way.
I haven't read that one. I've only read the one for the brothers. But
It's probably my favorite.
oh
Very
really?
short. Yeah, it's really sweet. I like the characters. It's not as much of a slow burn because it's like a novella, but the characters are really cool. I like the way they interact, and one of my favorite bedroom scenes, I think, in the romance genre is in that book. So
So that's another thing, right? Because like I feel like a lot of people who go into reading slow burns are also
Mm.
people who really prefer like a closed door romance, and they're looking for something that because I wasn't aware of this until I got on BookTube and I started interacting more with people who are trying to get into romance. But people really like there really is a giant crowd of people who want to read romance, but they don't really want to see anything too explicit. Um, and I feel like maybe like slow burns are like a good way for them to, I don't know, get a slice of the pie, I guess, because you know that there's going to be a part in the book where things are going to heat up,
Yeah.
but generally you can just depend upon the fact that it's never going to get too explicit too fast. Whereas with some of the authors, I do want to point out that with Courtney Milan, it's usually really hot, even if it is a slow burn. Like
Hmm.
it's really hot. So yeah, yeah. Okay, moving on. What's another book that you could talk about?
Another one. So I'm going to dip way back to the classics this time. And this one is more of a closed door thing, but one of my favorites, and I believe one of yours as well, North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell.
Oh yes.
I think this is a really good slow burn. It really showcases my favorite thing about it, which is the character development. Margaret and
Mhm.
Mr. Thornton do not understand each other's point of view just on a fundamental level when they first meet. But through their interactions, they start to see the other's point of view and to start thinking in a different way that really makes them stronger individually and then also as a couple. Do
Okay.
you want a synopsis of that one for anyone who hasn't read it? I
Yeah,
probably should.
actually,
Okay,
yes, yes.
I should have done that first. So, wow, how to
Okay,
sum this up?
well, it's about Margaret, who is a young woman
Yeah.
from the south of England who finds herself moving up north to this industrial city. I can't remember, like, do they mention like that it's, Manchester or Liverpool or anything in particular?
No, it's actually a fictional town. It's called
Right,
Milton, like
right.
Milltown,
Oh,
but
yeah,
is kind of modeled after those places, I think.
right. And she meets a mill owner in the town, and Margaret has like very genteel ideas. She's sort of like she's not quite gently, but she's on the edges of um,
Yes,
gentry.
and she
But
was raised by her wealthier aunt and uncle alongside
right.
her cousin, so she kind of grew up in society, and now she is an adult living with her elderly parents again for the first time since she was a kid. They're
Hmm.
moving to the north of England, which is cold, it's dark, it's a mill town, which is a completely different culture than what she's used to. So she doesn't understand like the way of life of the people there or the politics, because there is also a strike that is threatening to happen very soon.
Hmm. Hmm.
And also, she is exhausted. This girl is running the house. She's taking care of her elderly mother who is very ill. She's also, managing her father's feelings because he has just left the church over theological differences and is starting a new life like as a teacher here in this new town, and she does not have any emotional energy left. So then, when she meets Mr. Thornton, who is kind of rough around the edges and has a very different point of view, he is not genteel society at all. Like he started in a draper's shop, I think.
Hmm.
She not only doesn't understand him, she doesn't have the energy to put on a front, really. And so he kind of starts to think, oh, she's a snob and she's too good for me, but also she's really pretty. So they have to work through all of that to finally understand and respect each other.
I think this is like what you were talking about, like how the slow burn romance really works for you when it's in the background of these other tropes, because
Mm.
there's so many other things happening in this particular book. Because there is there's that talk about like about class, and then
Yeah.
there's about the differences between the rural traditional England
Mm.
and this new industrial England, and also like like Margaret's upbringing and her class, and her physical, her geographical location in England has sheltered her from so many hard truths that most of the population of England are undergoing at this particular point in time. And it's basically an unraveling of Margaret's world, basically, like everything that she understands about the world is basically coming apart at the seams, personally, politically, and she finds herself. To me, like this is the first time that Margaret finds herself in the world, so to speak, because until then she's been pretty much in a little bubble, and then all of a sudden she's in the world and she doesn't react very well to any of it. But there's Mr. Thornton, and Mr. Thornton is perhaps too much of the world. And then he needs to find a bridge to the finer feelings that Margaret represents. And so, yeah, all right, all right. So far, you're going like 2 for 2. All right. Um, what next?
Next, I think I have two more. So the next one, and I only have physical copies for some of these, but I really love The Night Circus by Erin
Right.
Morgenstern, which I know you have also read because we did that for book club. And go
Wait, but
ahead.
before we get to that, Deepthi had a question, and she said, "Does slow burn require smoldering?" And the reason I bring that up is because North and South has this amazing adaptation with the
Well,
one. Yeah, all right. You have an issue with the adaptation, if I remember correctly.
I do. I do not like the way that Margaret is portrayed.
Right.
Um, she so Mr. Thornton is really good, the script is really good, all that, but something about the actress, maybe the way she was directed, she seems very timid, and also she does seem like, the aloof snob that everybody thinks she is. And one of the things I love so much about the book is that she's not really that. She looks that way because she's reserved and exhausted. So she just kind of puts on this, exterior, this like cold face so no one can really see what she's thinking. But really, she is, just overworked, exhausted, confused about a lot of things, in a new place, doesn't really understand, but she's open to it. But also, she is tired. And so she doesn't really have the energy to ask the questions or to know how to ask the questions the right way. So she comes off like she's really looking down on everybody. But that's in the book, we know that that's not actually who she is on the inside. In the miniseries, she kind of is that person. And I don't love that, but I love everything else about it.
Um, yeah. Margaret, I'm just reading like Margaret's bit. Yeah, so people are pointing out that I might be going a hot doing this thing, but really it's just you cheating and just mentioning all the books that I love. So,
I have some that you haven't read, I
okay.
think. I
I guess,
tried. I could have done just all books that I know that you've read.
uh-huh.
I could have cheated that because I have some other ones. But I think I have at least one that I know you haven't read.
Okay. Okay. Then let's talk about the. Oh, wait, you didn't mention like does the small is the smolder necessary?
It's a really big part. Like a lot of the appeal of Slowburn is, yeah, the pining and the longing. and definitely some smolder going on. I think, it's a slow burn. You've got to have some smoldering in the burn, right?
Okay, all right. So I guess that answers deeply. I don't know what she means when she says the north-south thing repeats in a lot of places, but I
You mean
don't
like
know.
the trope maybe, or the structure of that novel?
Okay. BP, if you're watching this, let me know what you mean by the north-south thing repeats in a lot of places. But okay. All right. So the Night Circus. Do you want to like set that up for people who might not have read it?
Yes. So there's a lot going on with this one, but I'll try to kind of simplify it. Basically, there are these two ancient magicians who have different theories. One of them thinks that magical talent is all about innate talent. It's something you're born with and it's natural and you learn that way, and that's the best way.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guy thinks that you can teach someone to be a great magician. They don't have to have natural talent. So they set up this contest and they each choose a protege who's a young child, and they train them in their different schools of magic. One of them is the daughter of the first magician, and she has the natural talent for it. And the other one is a young boy that the second magician just kind of picked up out of an orphanage, has no innate talent, but will learn through books and teaching. So already they have very different approaches to how they practice magic. And they are, being raised, being taught, and told there will be a test to decide who is the best. But they don't know what that test is going to be until they're adults and things start to come together where they're both drawn into this plan to create the Night Circus, which is this special circus that, just pops up in a town, is they open during the night and then goes away, a few days later, but it's only open at night. It's very strange. It's got all these different acts, very specific aesthetic. And as they are involved in this, one of them is kind of in management, one of them is a performer. They're trying to figure out, okay, who is the magician I'm up against? Are they one of the other people in it? Are they one of the other people organizing it? And so there's a mystery as they're figuring out who the other one is. And then as they're kind of upping the game over and over again, and then they find out who the other is and they start to fall in love, which kind of makes it hard to compete, because then the competition kind of turns more into, I'm not doing this to one up you, I'm doing this to give you something special. And it's one of my favorite slow burns, to be honest, if you can't tell from my smile.
It's funny because like I didn't think of that as a slow burn. Like when I thought about like slow burn relationships, like when you put it that way, I see it. But when I was reading it, I didn't particularly think about it as being a slow burn romance because I don't know. Like okay, now I'm like thinking about like why I didn't think about it that way. I think because like there were like so many different things that were happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so for people who haven't read The Night Circus, this is possibly one of the most popular books on BookTube, Bookstagram, whatever. You can't get away from it. But in this particular instance, I would say that the hype is absolutely deserved because there are definitely books out there that everyone loves that I'm just like, I don't get it. And I might have made a couple of videos about those too. But The Night Circus is not one of those. It really is like a really fun novel, and I really enjoy the relationship at the center. And I think maybe it's because I don't know, like I don't really think of them as adults.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like because they just
Yeah. Well, and it also, the book itself feels very much like a young adult novel.
right.
So it kind of feels like, it would make sense if they were teenagers just based on the vibe of it. And also, we do spend a lot of time with them when they are kids. So I
Right.
don't know, maybe that kind of affects things too. But I also wonder, you said that you didn't initially think of it as a slow burn romance, but I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that the book itself isn't strictly a romance. Like, it's not just
Hmm.
about them falling in love, there's a lot of other things going on too.
There's like people in the comments.
Oh no.
I think Mary's found her soulmate, and it's Margaret, and both of them are united against recommendations. Okay. I forgot that Mary didn't really care for it. Okay.
We're
Um,
friends anyway.
well, Becca and I really liked it, so choose your fighter.
Well,
Um,
and I remember a lot of people not caring for it because Marco, the male lead, is
yeah,
an asshole. He
yeah,
is. But
yeah.
I love morally gray characters, so I'm cool with it.
Also, I grew up watching Bollywood movies, so I'm just genetically predisposed to like
I
them.
mean,
Like,
at least he's not slapping anyone around,
there
right?
you go.
We have
My
standards.
my bar is on the
My
floor.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway. And Steve is asking if are some Slowburns just buying time to fill pages as the author might not have all that much to say. And I think that is what we were talking about earlier about like bad writing.
Yes, I think that is the will they won't they trick coming in
Yeah.
because that's what writers do, right? When they don't know how to actually portray a couple that is together, uh, they just keep delaying it and pushing it off and giving them more reasons why, okay, not right now, or we
Mhm.
can't be together right now. And eventually, what that becomes most of the time is. Um, a reason to root against the couple
Right.
because like okay you're giving me all these reasons why they shouldn't be together. I believe you, but no, I don't think that's slow burn. I think that is bad writing when you just don't know what you're doing. I think it's definitely fair to say that the slow burn trope is one of the hardest ones to pull off, because it's a
Yeah.
very fine balancing act between like okay you want to give people a reason to root for them but you also want to give them believable obstacles, whether it's internal or external forces that are making it not right for this time. Um, and that's tricky to do. It's all about the timing and, again, the character development. And if a writer doesn't know how to do that, it's gonna flop. And that
It's
is, I
fun.
also think, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I just think that's also one of the reasons why slow burn works so well when it's not the main focus of the book, when it's a background, just adding to things. Because if you try to make it carry the story, most writers are going to fail.
It's funny because like as you were saying that, I began thinking about like all the historical romances that I've read where the writer is trying to do a slow burn, but it's really a will they won't they, but they're also doing a it's a historical romance, so it needs to be a bit hot. um, so they just have, it's this thing where the leads will either have sex or else they'll have like really intense make out sessions, but they
Yeah.
still can't get together. And I think that's where most of my hatred for the slow burn comes from because it's just bad writing that just devolves into will they, won't they? When I know that at the end they will because it's a friggin' romance novel. They
Right.
have to get together at the end. But the male lead is like, oh no, like I must only marry a woman of this particular rank, and I'm just like, well,
Mm.
then why are you in bed with her like all the time? You
Yeah.
know.
What are you doing, buddy?
So
Mm.
yeah, I think that's basically it. And Joy wants to know: is there a slow burn where you weren't rooting for the couple?
Usually, if I'm feeling that way in a book, I just drop it. So I don't remember any that come to mind. I can tell you about TV though. Um,
Uh-huh.
Castle is one of the worst
Oh,
offenders. It actually made me
yes.
quit US TV for years because they just could not get it together. The writers were so afraid of, like you said, the moonlighting curse. Putting the characters together. What are you going to do? Because I think a lot of times TV writers think the main reason we watch a show with a romance is because I lost that train of thought. I don't know. But like they're afraid to actually get them together. They don't know what to do with the couple when they're happily together.
Right.
They don't know how to have conflict in that relationship.
Hmm.
So they make it all about, you know, will they or won't they, and about like the sex. So they in Castle they ended up giving them all these reasons why they couldn't be together, because they were different people, because she was in a relationship when he wasn't, or he was when she wasn't, because they had fights. And after like 2 or 3 seasons, I was just sitting there, I was like, okay, yeah, you two should never get together. And I did end up dropping that one. I know they got together later, but I doubt it was any good.
No, and Panda points out that it actually got worse when they got together, and I don't know because I stopped
Yeah.
in the so after they got together the first time and then they broke up for like absolutely BS reasons. That's when I just stopped. I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've had enough. Same with Bones, like it got to a point where I just couldn't, and I really enjoyed Bones in the first couple of seasons, and then
Mhm.
they just it just got ridiculous. I think around the time that they went away for a year and then they came back and suddenly Booth had a girlfriend, and I was just like, what is happening here? Like I was
Yeah.
absolutely over it at that point. um uh, who was it? I think Mari mentioned Gone with the Wind, which
Mm.
I guess is like a good example, but I feel like it's a good example for us because I think the point of Gone with the Wind is like everybody wanted Rhett and Scarlett to be together. Have you ever met anyone who wanted Ashley and Scarlett to get together?
No, I don't think so. I think my mom is a fan of Ashley as a character,
Huh.
but I don't think she actually shipped them in any way. Here's where I confess, I've seen the movie, I've never actually read the book. So my discussion on the
Mhm.
Gone with the Wind can only go so far.
That book is Wyatt something.
Hmm.
Um, I'm going to give you a bunch of trigger warnings for language, as well as there's a sexual assault scene, and it's just deeply screwed up.
Yeah.
There's like things that happen in that thing. Anyway, all right. So, all right, what next do you have?
Okay, I have two more. Trying to decide which to go with next. I think my next one is going to be Pride and Prejudice and Other Flavors by Sonali Dev, which I'm not sure if you've read that one or
I
not.
haven't. So,
Okay.
Sonali Dev is like somebody whom I see like a lot of work from, right?
Hmm.
But I haven't actually read it because I have a okay. I'll confess that I am not the biggest fan of Austen retellings
Mm.
because they tend to be more miss than hit when it
Yeah.
comes to so now you are dealing with like two strikes. All right, all right, tell me about this book.
See, I'm not just pandering with my list. Um, so it is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. And
Uh-huh.
like you, I tend to be skeptical about Austen retellings just because really you think that you can do Austen better than Austen can. Sit down. But I like it a lot. It is a modern retelling. It takes place in modern day San Francisco. and it's actually gender flipped. So the Lizzie character is a young chef named DJ who has, I think, just moved to the city with his younger sister who is ill. And the Darcy character is, I wrote down the names because I knew I would forget names in here. It's Trisha, who is a neurosurgeon. And she comes from a very wealthy family. They're in politics, and there's a lot of pressure that she feels to be the perfect daughter, the perfect person. And when she was younger, she trusted the wrong person, who is, of course, the Wickham character. And it had really bad consequences for someone in her family. And she bears a lot of guilt for that and feels like her family is still judging her for that. Anyway, these two characters meet, and really bad first impression. Like, he is catering this big dinner that her family is hosting, and she, comes into the kitchen because she just wants something to snack on. She's been working for hours and hours and rushed over, and ends up like creating a bit of a mess. I think he burns his hands, and she almost burns hers. And she says something like, "Do you know how much these hands are worth?" Because she's a neurosurgeon. And boy, does that just, like, so many reasons that does not go over well. And so from there, things take off. And I think this retelling works because, it does follow the Pride and Prejudice story, but it also adds its own thing. It's got a lot of complicated family dynamics going on, really intense character work for both of them, especially for Trisha, I think, because let's be honest, she has the most problems and the most things to work through. And it is, I guess you could also call this an enemies to lovers as well. But it takes them a really long time to get to know each other and understand and get past those first impressions. And when they do, you're really happy for them. They work well together, and it's just like, okay, once you could finally get past all that. But, throughout there is a slow burn, building up to back that up. And I loved it. It was one of my favorite reads last year. Not perfect, but a lot of fun and a pretty good retelling.
Okay. Where is it set?
San Francisco. And she is Indian American, and I believe he is, trying to remember, I know he's from London. I think his mother might have been Ethiopian, but there is some internal conflict for him because he is biracial, and his father's family, sorry, really didn't accept him and his mom and sister. So he's also bringing that into this relationship with Trisha and her snooty family as well.
Okay, and he's he's like Indian.
No, he did
Okay.
work in an Indian restaurant growing up, so he does some like fusion recipes for his work, and so that's kind of like why they bring him in for this big catering job. I think is because he can kind of he might have been recommended, but he can do some of those traditional dishes and stuff that they want.
So Panda also loves it. So okay, I'm gonna put it on my TBR. Panda, you're supposed to be like telling me not to put things on my TBR. Like, this is an absolute fail with your team.
She loves me. I will give like one caveat. There is like one scene where the book really missteps, and it's a confrontation between DJ and a police officer, and Trisha, just with all her like rich privilege, really, really mishandles the whole thing, and it was pretty upsetting. So I think that's one where the book didn't quite handle it as well as it could have, but the rest of it I really like.
Steve is asking if there is a which Slowburn made a good movie, and I immediately thought of something, but it doesn't have it doesn't have a good payoff, Steve, and that's The Age of Innocence.
I almost put that on my list, but I knew if I give her one that has a bad ending and they don't get together, this is gonna ding my rating.
Age of Innocence, like if you haven't watched the movie, you really should. It's one of my favorite movies, actually, even if I mean, yeah. See, this is one of those examples of a really good slow burn where, it's everything, right? Like like Daniel Day-Lewis and Michelle Pfeiffer are just incredibly made for each other, and those characters are absolutely perfect for each other. And then the ending comes about, and you're just like, no! Like, it just kills me.
It hurts a lot. It's also like maybe the one cheating story that I really, really love because he is engaged before they meet and he stays engaged. And he stays married. And like that is like, it's an interesting point to bring up because you can't have a slow burn that doesn't come to fruition. It's still a good slow burn, but it does, bring the rating for the romance itself down a little bit. Although that is also kind of one of my favorite literary endings at the same time. So
that's true. I feel like so here's where your expectations when you enter a book come into play, right? Because there are this is what I meant when I said that I sometimes like to read the endings of books, because there are times when I feel like I am open to whatever surprise the author might have in store for me. And then it turns out that I'm not, as is the case very recently with 2 books, not just one, but 2. And I feel like I need to be prepared for some things, such as an unhappy ending or an ending that I don't want. To be like it can be an unhappy ending, but sometimes you want that unhappy ending. Do you know what I mean?
Sometimes that works better for the characters, like in Age of Innocence.
Exactly. But it's I would recommend that to you, Steve. Steve also says, despite the constraints a romantic novel may have, which have surprised you, which went places you did not expect. And Steve, I don't know what you mean by constraints of a romantic novel, because I'm a romance novel reader, and I don't recognize any constraints whatsoever. So that's a very noob question, Steve. And okay, which was the one that went places that you didn't expect? Because I have one. Courtney Milan did this novella. I can't remember the name of it, but it's something The Extraordinary Mrs. Martin. Is it?
I haven't read that one.
It's a novella. It's not even a full-length novel. It's a novella, and it is one of the funniest things that I have ever read. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, I'm struggling to come up with an answer. I feel like there isn't that much in the romance genre that actually surprises me.
I think like, sorry, go ahead.
No, you'll give me time to think.
I feel like the people who are surprised by the places that a romance novel goes are generally people who don't read romances. Because if you are used to the genre, then you know just how adaptable it is. And you know that it can be anything from, I mean, we joke about it all the time, like the shifter romances, right? Like it can be aliens, it can be, Amber's not here today, but like, what was it? The beaver shifters?
No, it's the honey badgers.
The honey badgers.
Mari will know. Mari will know. She's still here.
The honey badger romances, I would have been like, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have seen honey badger shifter romances as something that people would write, but I mean, there's the corona ones, you know, where
Yes.
they fall in love with the virus.
I just thought of one that surprised me. I can't remember the author's name, but How to Flirt with a Naked Werewolf.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. The thing that surprised me is when he was a wolf, he peed on her porch. I didn't see that coming.
That is true. I didn't see that coming either.
So that's one thing that's surprising in the romance genre.
Yes. There you go, Steve. And Panda, yes, it is the one with the ladies being over 60. That's the Courtney Milan book that I
Ooh, that one. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I will say
The Incomparable Mrs. Martin. I think that's what it's called.
Okay. That one needs to go on my list because I remember you talking about it and it sounds good. I will say that Countess Conspiracy did surprise me a bit, although not too much because it is Courtney Milan and she does this, because it really went into Violet's trauma in a it took it very seriously and it portrayed it really well. I think we're seeing more of it these days, but it's still difficult for writers to give us a quote unquote unlikable heroine.
Right.
And Violet is very, very prickly. She's got a lot of defenses up, to keep people out and protect herself for very good reasons. And I thought Milan did a really good job portraying that and helping us understand the reasons and taking it seriously. Like a lot of romance writers, I feel like would, in the end, kind of wave it away with magic wand and say it's all okay now because she has the right guy. And yeah, she has the right guy, but she still has issues. She still has problems. She still has concerns, especially about her health. And those aren't going to go away, but it's okay because she has a partner who is going to take her seriously and respect that and respect her limits. And I was really happy to see that handled so well and realistically in a romance novel, because sometimes it does get waved away with magic a little bit.
Yeah, so basically everyone should read Courtney Milan because she's awesome.
Yeah.
You should also follow her on Twitter because every so often she she goes on a rampage and it's always like fun and educational to watch her do it. All right, so what's the last book on your list?
The last book, and you're going to laugh at this, but it's actually a series. Yes. So for those of you who don't know, I have a long-standing gripe with series. I don't know why everything has to be a series and why writers can't just write a standalone novel. Like, you don't have to blow everything up into a trilogy just because Tolkien did it. You don't have to do a 6-novel series because Rowling did it. Like, you can just tell a story and be done with it and move on.
Right.
That's my series rant. But I have kind of learned to live with it the past year or so because my book club keeps giving me the first book in a series and I have to read them and then I like them and it's really annoying. But last year I did discover the Gaslight Mystery series by Victoria Thompson. And I've been talking about this one a lot. It is a 23-book series. 24 is coming out this month. I'm dying a little bit. But it's a murder mystery series. So And it's like murder of the week format. So I can live with that. It's not all cliffhangers, right? She's going to
Uh-huh.
tell a story, she's going to resolve it. And it's got really likable characters. So, um, yeah, still, it's a lot of books, but they're short, they're fast reads. And I grew up watching, like, you know, episode Mystery of the Week, episodic television from the 80s and 90s. So, like Matlock and suddenly blanking on everything. What is the one that James Garner was in? Where he's the private detective.
Yes.
Starts with an
Who remembers? Who I can't remember, but I know the one that.
yeah, but like
it's not Perry Mason. It's the other one.
no, but like there's Matlock and Columbo
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
the one with Tom Selleck and all those ones. And there's also Scarecrow Mrs. King, which is one of my very favorite shows. And so I'm used to that storytelling style. I'm used to like, okay, you get this story this week, and it's very comforting for me. I end up rewatching those a lot, and this series reminds me of those because you've got the episodic storytelling with the mysteries, but in the background you have the slow but steady development of the relationship between midwife Sarah Brandt and Detective Sergeant Frank Malloy. And this is a historical fiction series. So it takes place in 1890s New York. You've got a lot of, location stuff coming in, history that Victoria Thompson is drawing on, which, adds a lot of texture and background to it. And the great thing is, she manages to pull off a really long slow burn. They start out as kind of antagonistic relationship because she is, this independent woman who is going to stick her nose in his cases because she wants to see justice done. And he is this surly and honestly kind of misogynistic, corrupt police detective who just wants to, like close the case. But as they continue to run into each other and work together on cases, they develop this grudging respect and then a friendship. They start to change each other's ways of thinking. She learns to be a little bit more cautious instead of just running into danger because justice. And he learns to respect her intelligence, really, and like her resourcefulness, and see, oh, like she is very capable woman, and like really like the best person that I know, also because she is like a shining light in the tenements of New York. And they start to fall in love, but there are all these reasons why it wouldn't work. They're from different classes. She is, although she's working as a midwife now, she was born as the daughter to this really powerful Knickerbocker family. It's like old
Mm-hmm.
New York money. And also she's just like a really good person. And he is an Irish cop, so he's really
Mm-hmm.
looked down upon by society. He has no money. He is supporting his mother and his disabled son. And he also does not have the shiniest past because basically the only way he can support his family is by taking bribes, to solve cases or not solve cases. And he's
Ooh.
really lazy. Like he won't like put in all the extra work to solve a case just because it's the right thing to do. If it's going to be too much work, he'll just close it. And Sarah really changes his mind on that. And slowly, like he starts to do these things, not just because she's prodding him to, but because he is also realizing, oh, this is worth doing just because it's the right thing to do. So, they've got all these differences, things keeping them apart, and they don't actually get together until like book 12 or 13. which is a really long time. So it is a slow burn. It's one of those ones where you have like one line in a book where it's like he's walking in the door and Sarah like checks her hair in the mirror and you're like, so like the slowest of burns, but totally worth it because when they do finally get together, they are really good together. Like they support each other, they bring out the best in each other, and it's really, really fun to watch and to see it finally happen.
So, Panda wants me to ask if book number 24 is going to be the last one, but I don't. It doesn't sound like that to me.
No, I don't think so. I think Victoria Thompson is planning to just keep writing these. She's been doing it since the 90s. She writes
Wow.
a book a year. Um, and I finally caught up, so I'm very sad. Like once this one comes out, I'll have to wait another year. I read these in like 3 months, so that's
I
going to be
mean,
hard.
yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah,
I mean, am I going to really, am I going to really judge like, these are my reading habits
you
too?
get it.
I do get it. I was actually thinking, like, as you were saying, like, except for the whole bride taking stuff, like,
Mhm.
um, not the books. The books are actually quite different. But have you watched Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries?
I've seen a few episodes, and I'm actually just reading the first one right now, the first book.
Okay. So the book is actually quite different, but like
Yeah.
the series is sort of like this basically. It's it's about this woman who's from like this upper class background, and then she moves back to Melbourne, and then she has uh, this passion for justice, and
Yes.
there's a policeman, and he's quite yummy,
He
uh,
is.
but he comes from a working class background and stuff.
Yeah.
And
He's a lot nicer though than
right.
Frank is in the beginning.
hmm You are actually the second person that I know who's been reading Gaslight Mysteries. I don't know
Mm.
who the other person is, but I know there's been somebody else out there. I want to say Rosie, but maybe somebody else who was just really into it. So it's been on my TBR for a while, and I think I might just bump it up a little bit because now that Panda's got me reading like thrillers again, I
Mhm.
kind of really want like something more like,
Yeah.
murdery and mystery like.
It's really
Another
good.
like slow burn I would say, historical fiction murder series that you might like. I don't know. Have you read this? Have I told you about the C.S. Harris, Sebastian Sincere series?
Oh, I don't think you mentioned them to me, but I remember Panda did when she was like trying to
Okay.
choose a book for book club a while back, and it's definitely on my list. Those look nice and dark.
They're very dark. So one of the things that I love about them is that they're basically they're about Regency England in a way that's very different from the usual historical romance, Georgette Hare kind of thing that we're used to. So it's really about poverty and about, the murders are like really terrible. It's about
Yeah.
people who are refugees and they're like living in filth, and this the kind of thing that we are used to today where like if you're poor, then basically people don't care about what happens to you, um,
Mm.
and if you're rich, then you better be connected if you want justice, because otherwise you just get something that resembles it but not really.
Yeah. That is
Uh,
a definite parallel with Gaslight Mysteries. That's like a
right.
major theme that runs through those. It's like if you're poor, nobody cares if you die. Nobody
Yeah.
cares if you get raped and left in an alleyway. But if you're
Right.
rich, you can pay to have anybody, blamed for the murder if
Right.
you want. You can have things hushed up.
So that's really the dynamic also of the Sebastian
Mm.
Sincere series. But the difference is that Sebastian, although he and his eventual wife Hero are both from the upper classes and are incredibly well connected, um, Hero has like a real passion for justice, and she's um, you know how I feel about like calling people feminist when they're like
Mm.
from the 19th century and stuff. I'm just like, well, these are labels that don't really travel like that into the past.
Yes.
But she's definitely like what we would call a social justice warrior today, and
Mm.
um, she's like a real do-gooder, but like she like really puts her money where her mouth is. And Sebastian, even though he is from the upper classes and he's a gentleman, he has a passion for justice, and they sort of put together a little team, and they solve murders basically, even though people don't want uh, them to do it. And it's a slow burn as well, because they start out like like Sebastian really doesn't like Hero at all, and he's
Mhm.
actually in love with somebody else, and then they start bumping into each other at different crime scenes and in places where he doesn't expect to see a woman of her background,
Mhm.
and then he has this grudging respect for her, and then eventually they end up having to get married, and then yeah.
I'm already shipping it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think like you would. I think like you would be incredibly into the Sebastian and Hero
Yeah.
romance.
It sounds
Oh,
right up my alley.
although it is like what you just said about Gaslight Mysteries, which is that it's really murder forward, and like the
Nice.
romance is like it's sort of simmering in the background, and then I think like book they don't take that long as like Gaslight Mysteries. I think it's like
Oh, they don't take a dozen books?
no, I think they only take like half a dozen books. Oh.
Good.
But she's on the same schedule, like
Yeah.
she puts out a book once every year, and they are excellent, and I recommend them highly to everybody. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
one more reason I think you might like Gaslight Mysteries
Uh-huh.
is because it does not have that anachronistic social justice warrior thing going on. These characters very much, she does this really interesting balancing act where her characters have the prejudices and misconceptions of their time, but while you're reading it, you can also tell that those aren't the views that she holds. And over the books, they, they learn, but it's not like a sudden awakening, like, oh, Italian people are good. It's like it takes time, as they're, working in different communities in New York and interacting with different people, their horizons broaden. And I really like that too, because I also get really annoyed when you have like a Regency era heroine who has all of the same ideas about feminism and politics that we do now. And it's like,
Yeah.
it took us 200 years to get here. How do you do that? I understand the impulse, but
Yeah.
I don't always want to read it because it takes me out of it so much.
There's literally a book right now on NetGalley about the suffragette bombers, I think it's what it's called. And it's literally about women who are like carrying out bombing campaigns in London because they just want the right to like vote.
Okay.
And then yeah, but that's the kind of thing that I remember when I see like women in the 19th century talking about like, oh, I really hate being in this marriage market, and I'm like, you'd never think of it that way, like you
No.
know
Like maybe
um
one person in, 1,000, I don't know, but not every single romance heroine.
uh,
It's a
yeah, it's like
lot.
not like me, not like the other girls. um Anyway, okay, so all right, so I think we're coming to the end of this thing, right? But
Mhm.
I guess like this is what, the more I was like listening to you talk, the more that I was thinking that if I have somebody like you who can just winnow out the majority of things that are masquerading as slow burn, and are able to tell me, like, well, this is the one that I like for XYZ reasons, I feel like then I might be interested, because, like, right now, I haven't read the Sonali Dev one, but it is going on my TBR, to be honest. Like, if you and Panda tell me that it's great, then I'm going to read it, like, obviously. And the Gaslight Mysteries is obviously my speed. Like, that is 100% something that I would read with or without a romance in it, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
murder. I'm here for murder.
Aren't we
Yay,
all?
murder. More so as we grow older.
Yes.
But I think, like, what really makes it difficult as a trope is that it can be so difficult to define and to
Yeah.
also pull off, like, um, most people that just talk about it are just talking about something entirely different, or else are talking about things that aren't written particularly well.
Yeah. I can understand that. It's a really hard one to pull off, and a lot of things get labeled slow burn that are not slow burn. So you can't just read because somebody said it was, unless they can explain why. Because yeah, a lot of times it's will they won't they, which is not good.
So is it, like, always a happy accident for you, or do you, like, search out things that you think might have a slow burn in it?
It's usually more of a happy accident.
Mm.
If someone recommends something to me and says it has a slow burn, this is someone that I know and I know they understand my definition of it, then I will read it because they said it was good. But usually I just come across them. Um, they just kind of
Right.
happen, and I'm always delighted, even if it takes 12 books.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be reading the Gaslight Mysteries for the slow burn. I think I'm gonna read it for the murder, to be
See,
honest.
that's what you think. But then you'll fall in love with them and you'll just devour them like I did, 4 at a time. And it's great.
Okay. I'll have to read them and then report back. But in the meantime, we've been speaking for an hour, so we should probably end this. Becca, where can people find you online?
Yeah. People can find me at my blog, bookitwithbecca.wordpress.com. And I actually will have a series review of the Gaslight Mysteries going up tomorrow, so be sure to check that out. And I am also on Twitter at BEC_HERE. And sometime in the future, we're recording in April, but I will be appearing on Emily Edwards' Fuckboys of Literature podcast to talk about all of the many fuckboys in Pride and Prejudice.
I am so excited for you to be on that podcast and to be talking about that particular book in particular. I have this, well, you know about this, but, like, for people who don't know, I have this series called Bad News Lovers, and in one of them, I did this thing about Darcy being a fuckboy, basically. And honestly, it gets so many views even today, and people are mad about it.
Ooh,
Like,
well,
seriously mad about it.
don't worry, they'll be coming for me now because I'm going to diss on everybody.
An equal opportunity offender.
Yes, I love them, but
Yeah.
people don't know how to read Pride and Prejudice, and that's not my fault.
I think that's actually another thing that we should be talking about at some point, like how people don't understand that you can love a character, but absolutely understand and recognize and possibly acknowledge that
Yeah.
they're kind of douches as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, with like 99.9% of Austen's characters, that's what she wants you to realize.
Yeah.
These are not perfect people.
No. They would be boring if they were.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining. Big shout out to the book club who showed up for Becca. That's really sweet. But also, like, everybody else who showed up, Steve and Margaret and Rosie and Lana. Thank you all for showing up. And this was a fun fun little discussion. I think we probably have something else. Like Becca, if you think of something else, come back anytime.
I have so many things to say.
Excellent. We'll have more of these lives, and on this channel, like I said, I am going to be doing more lives on my channel as we go ahead. Mainly because I'm lazy, but let's not focus on that. But thank you all for joining, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time, I guess.
Thank you for having